What if I told you that thousands of Americans are quietly moving their money away from Ethereum? Not because Ethereum failed, but because something faster, cheaper, and more aggressive showed up. This isn't hype. This isn't a TikTok trend. This is something happening right now inside the US crypto market. While most people are still arguing online about ETH versus BTC, a different group of investors, developers, and even hedge funds are asking a very uncomfortable question. Is Ethereum becoming too slow for the future? And is Solana the upgrade? Solana was once called too risky, too centralized, too experimental. And yet today, Solana is processing tens of millions of transactions daily, powering some of the most active crypto apps in America, and quietly attracting capital that used to belong to Ethereum. This video is not about price predictions. It's not about moon talk. This is about why smart American money is paying attention to Solana again, what changed after its near-death experience, and whether Solana is actually becoming something Ethereum can't be anymore. Stay with me, because by the end of this video, you'll understand why Solana is no longer Ethereum's little competitor, but a serious alternative. Let's be clear about one thing. Ethereum did not fail. Ethereum is still the most secure smart contract network, the backbone of DeFi, the favorite of institutions and ETFs. But here's the problem. Ethereum became too expensive for the average American user. At its peak, simple swaps cost $50. NFT mints cost $100+. Small investors were completely priced out. For Wall Street, this wasn't a problem. For everyday Americans, it was a deal breaker. Now add another issue, complexity. Ethereum didn't become simpler over time. It became layered, fragmented, and confusing. Layer 2s, bridges, rollups, sidechains. For developers, this meant more tools, more risk, more points of failure. For users, it meant, why is this so complicated? Ethereum chose security and decentralization first. That's not wrong, but it came at a cost, and nature hates inefficiency. Whenever a system becomes slow, expensive, complicated, something faster eventually challenges it. That's exactly where Solana enters the story. Before Americans trusted Solana, they watched it almost die. In 2022, Solana was crushed. The FTX collapse destroyed confidence. Network outages became memes. Critics called it uninvestable. Many U.S. investors sold at massive losses. And here's the important part. Solana didn't hide. It rebuilt. Instead of marketing hype, Solana focused on network stability, validator improvements, developer experience. By 2024-2025, something strange happened. Developers came back, not influencers, not speculators. Builders. Apps on Solana started seeing faster user growth, lower abandonment, real daily activity. Meanwhile, Ethereum apps were powerful, but expensive and fragmented. Solana positioned itself differently. We are not the most decentralized. We are the most usable. And that message resonated with a specific group of Americans. Retail investors, app users, founders building consumer crypto products. This wasn't about ideology anymore. It was about speed, cost, and experience. And for the first time, Solana wasn't trying to be Ethereum. It was trying to be what Ethereum couldn't afford to be. There's a phrase quietly spreading in US crypto communities. Solana feels like Ethereum in 2017, and that comparison matters more than price charts. Back then, Ethereum wasn't perfect. It wasn't polished. But it was alive. Developers were experimenting. Users were trying new things daily. And most importantly, normal people could afford to use it. Fast forward to today. Ethereum is mature, powerful, and respected. But it feels corporate. Solana, on the other hand, feels raw, fast, and experimental. For American builders, this matters. Because when developers choose a blockchain, they don't ask, which chain is the most decentralized? They ask, which chain gives users the best experience? Which chain lets my app scale? Which chain doesn't scare users away with fees? On Solana, transactions cost fractions of a cent. Apps feel instant. Users don't think about gas. That invisible blockchain experience is exactly what mainstream Americans want. They don't want to understand crypto. They just want it to work. And Solana understands this psychology better than Ethereum right now. That's why many US founders say, Ethereum is where you build infrastructure. Solana is where you build products. This shift in mindset is huge, because mass adoption doesn't come from ideology. It comes from convenience. Most people laugh when they hear, "Memecoins are driving Solana." But smart Americans look deeper. Memecoins are not just jokes. They are stress tests for networks, onboarding tools for new users, liquidity magnets, and Solana handled them better than anyone expected. During peak meme seasons, Ethereum fees exploded. Users were priced out. Networks clogged. Solana, it stayed usable. That sent a message to US investors. If it can survive memecoin chaos, it can survive real-world usage. Now add payments. In America, payments matter more than philosophy. Credit cards are instant. Apple Pay is instant. Venmo is instant. Crypto that isn't instant feels broken. Solana offers near-instant settlement, extremely low cost, predictable performance. That's why payment startups quietly choose Solana, not because it's trendy, but because it feels normal to users. And here's the key insight most people miss. They start with jokes. They stay for convenience. Ethereum lost this crowd. Solana embraced it. And that's why activity matters more than price. Now let's talk about the most important part. Investor psychology. American investors don't just chase returns, they chase narratives. For years, the narrative was simple. Bitcoin, high store of value. Ethereum, beschätzer smart contracts. But narratives evolve. Today, many Americans feel Bitcoin is expensive but safe. Ethereum is powerful but slow. So the question becomes, what's next? Solana fits perfectly into that mental gap. It represents speed, youth, recovery, second chances. Remember, Americans love comeback stories. A network that almost died, got mocked, rebuilt quietly, and returned stronger. That story resonates deeply with US culture. It's the same reason Americans love startups that fail then win, athletes who come back stronger, companies that reinvent themselves. Solana's story isn't clean, and that's exactly why it works. Now compare this to Ethereum. Ethereum feels established, stable, institutional. That's great for ETFs, but excitement doesn't come from stability. It comes from momentum, and momentum is exactly what Solana has regained. This doesn't mean Ethereum is finished. It means the market is diversifying, and Americans, more than anyone, love optionality. They don't go all in on one idea. They hedge narratives. That's why many US portfolios now look like this. Bitcoin for safety, Ethereum for infrastructure, Solana for growth. And that balance tells you everything you need to know. Now let's slow down, because smart American investors don't fall in love with narratives without asking one dangerous question. What can go wrong? And with Solana, that question matters a lot. The biggest concern is simple: reliability. Solana's past network outages are not forgotten in the US market. American investors hate one thing more than volatility: unpredictability. If a payment network goes down, businesses lose trust. Users panic. Regulators notice. Ethereum, for all its problems, has one unbeatable strength: it almost never stops. Solana had to rebuild that trust from scratch. And to be fair, the team didn't ignore the problem. They redesigned core architecture, improved validator software, focused heavily on stability. Outages today are far less frequent. But in finance, memory lasts longer than improvements. This is why many Americans still hesitate to go all in on Solana. The second risk: centralization concerns. US investors know regulators watch control points. Solana's validator structure, hardware requirements, and leadership visibility make some Americans nervous. Not because decentralization is a religion, but because regulation follows influence. If regulators can point to identifiable leaders, concentrated infrastructure, then pressure becomes easier. Ethereum feels safer here, not perfect, but safer. Third risk: narrative fatigue. Americans have seen this movie before. A fast chain rises, hype explodes, money floods in. Then reality hits. Solana must prove it's not just the next chapter in that story. And this is why serious US investors aren't asking, can Solana pump? They're asking, can Solana still be here in 5 years? So with all these risks, why are Americans still betting on Solana? Because risk without reward is bad. But risk with asymmetric upside is opportunity. Here's the mindset: Ethereum already won. That means Ethereum already priced in success. Solana hasn't. For American investors, this creates a familiar setup. Ethereum, Apple, Solana, and early Tesla. Not guaranteed, not safe, but potentially transformative. Another reason? User behavior doesn't lie. Despite criticism, developers keep building, users keep transacting, capital keeps returning. This matters more than Twitter debates. And there's a quiet factor many people ignore. If Solana survives, it becomes a hedge, a performance layer, a growth engine. That's enough to justify allocation. Also, Americans understand one key truth. There is no single winner in technology. The internet didn't choose one company. Mobile didn't choose one app. Cloud didn't choose one provider. Why would blockchain? Ethereum and Solana don't have to kill each other. They can coexist, serving different needs. Ethereum for settlement, security, institutional trust. Solana for speed, consumer apps, experimentation. This dual-chain future feels realistic to U.S. investors. Not emotional, not maximalist, just practical. So what's the final American approach? Not hype, not fear, not blind loyalty. Balance. Most serious U.S. investors are doing three things. They respect Ethereum's dominance. It's the backbone. It's not going anywhere. They monitor Solana's execution. Not price, execution. Uptime, adoption, real apps. They size risk intelligently. Solana is growth exposure, not a foundation. This mindset explains everything. Solana isn't winning because people hate Ethereum. Solana is winning because it offers something different. At a moment when users want speed and investors want upside, and Ethereum isn't losing, it's simply becoming infrastructure. And here's the most important takeaway for the viewer. The real opportunity isn't choosing sides. The real opportunity is understanding cycles. Today, Ethereum, or stability. Solana dies momentum. Tomorrow, that balance may shift again. American markets move fast, but they reward those who stay flexible. So the real question isn't, is Solana better than Ethereum? The real question is, where's the next wave of users going and why? And right now, that wave is experimenting. That wave is curious. That wave is fast. And that's why Solana is back in the conversation.